One of the most important parts of any Assassin's Creed game is the protagonist, so today I've decided to re-rank them a final time before Ragnarok, and if you guys disagree, if my lowest character is your highest and vice versa, that's fine. This is all just my opinion, and I'm happy to hear your comments. All I ask is that you just be decent to each other, and I know that's fairly redundant to ask on the internet, but I would appreciate it. Anyway, let's just get right into the list. Now at last place on this list, I've decided to put Kassandra and ALEXIOS, who I can't even compare very well to the others, because say what you like about Connor or Jacob, at least they were characters. These two aren't characters, simply just walking selling points trying to market the series to a new audience, dumbing down the protagonists in the process. Both of these are also pretty poorly acted. Odyssey's one redeeming factor is just how funny it can be at times, and that's often as a result of some terribly delivered lines. Although it's not like the script did either of these any favours. And I can already see the comments telling me about how I'm wrong because you made ALEXIOS a saint or Kassandra evil, but choice isn't equal to depth. Just because you can make some arbitrary choice with a red icon next to it isn't equivalent to any sort of growth or change, which never feels satisfying given how flippant you can be with both of these characters. In all, these two are terrible. There's some bad characters in the series, some mediocre ones, some quite bad characters, but never on this level, because these aren't characters at all. Now the next spot on the list goes to Connor, or Radun Hagaden, or Radahangadon. I feel like I'd actually know how to say the name if Noah Watts actually did, because he says it in like 5 different ways, but names aside, I don't really like Connor. He's an incredibly unlikable character, as he's just completely ungrateful, naive, and lacks pretty much any human emotion, and this doesn't really change either. So it's not like he went from unlikable to something just more compelling, he's just constantly dull, and it's a shame about the cut monologue, as that suggests Connor had some sort of progression, as rushed as it would have been. He's also one of the most robotic protagonists, having little in the way of any human relationships, and the closest he got to that was with Haytham, but Connor just doesn't reciprocate any of those emotions, and even with a character like Achilles, there's just nothing there. You don't get the sense that these two like or care for one another, and you don't get the sense Connor has any emotion at all. The defense of Connor's emptiness is that, well, he lost everything and went through trauma as a child, but that doesn't just have to define his character and can just be a part of them. But unfortunately, that's not the case for Connor, and it doesn't change anywhere through Assassin's Creed 3. So at number 8, I've decided to put Jacob Frye. Jacob is a character with zero depth at all. He's defined by his comedy, and there's not much else that makes him special. And you know what? A word of advice, Ubisoft Quebec: if you're going to make your characters single trait their humour, it would help to make them funny. The fact that none of Jacob's jokes land just make him far more irritating than anything, and he comes off far more like a child entertainer than an assassin. It's fine to incorporate humour into a character. In fact, it's worked for a lot of them in the past, but with any good character you need to balance their more dominant traits with some more subtle ones, or just have more than one trait preferably. Jacob just has the one, and it's not done very well either. Just above Jacob, I put his sister, EVIE, who could have been better if she wasn't tethered to Jacob. I don't think she's this perfect character restricted by poor game design or anything, but I think EVIE could have at least been good. She's not really like any of the other assassins we'd seen in the past because she was inquisitive and curious, but wasn't as naive as a character like Connor or Arno, and had some maturity about her while not being entirely deadpan. The reason she's so low is because she's bound by Jacob, and even the best characters couldn't thrive while being connected to one so poor, and EVIE was often reduced to fixing one of Jacob's messes or setting up a joke. Her mediocrity is in large part because of Ubisoft wanting 2 protagonists, which, as we've seen twice now, simply doesn't work. Even if the writing is there, the characters will never reach their full potential, and EVIE is another example of that, even if there was only a little bit there. Shay is a character who's similar to Connor in some respects, in that he's serious, driven and traumatised, but he's done a bit better. By no means is he a great character, but he's fine enough. Where Connor failed to show any human traits, Shay has some. We see him feel guilt, laugh at times, and question the morality of the things he does and the people he works with. Shay's nothing special, but he feels human in the sense that he questions things and he feels things, but on the whole, he's just fine, and for a game like Rogue you don't need anything perfect, and Shay just kind of does his job. So now that we're into the top 5, we've reached the characters that I do like, starting with Arno. Something notable about Arno is that he has a love interest, and although we saw this in the past, EZIO had Christina and Edward had Caroline, they were never at the forefront as Elise was for Arno. And I don't think having one is a bad idea. It's a good way to show a softer side to a character and or contrast them. But Elise doesn't really serve that purpose, instead seeming more like a tool to move the plot along, and as a result of that she just became very unlikable. And because Arno spent so much time focused on her, it really detracted from his character and a lot of potential growth. On a more positive note though, Arno did have some likeable traits. He was humorous and had a lot of charisma, and he matured a lot in Dead Kings. And like a lot of things in Assassin's Creed Unity, Arno is something decent that could have been so much better, and I would have really loved to see a sequel for him, but what we got was alright in itself, so I like Arno. So now we're on to Edward Kenway. I can say that I love every character from here on up, and Edward's journey is one of the most enjoyable yet the most tragic in the series. While Edward seems very nonchalant and jovial, his character is actually quite deep, and he clearly cares a lot about people and is very well suited to being an assassin. His growth is just astounding, especially considering he only had the one game, but his core principles never really change throughout the game. He's always like a bit of like an anarchist, and he clearly cares about people from the very start, and that's why he's so well suited to being an assassin. He just has more of a sense of purpose towards the end, and seeing his growth is so satisfying because you love him from the start, but you love him even more at the end, and that's why it's so tragic that so many bad things happen to him, and he deserved the sequel probably more than any character in the series, besides one we'll get to later, but you probably know who that is. But anyway, Edward Kenway is one of the greatest characters in the Assassin's Creed series. It feels wrong to put ALTAIR anywhere other than second, but the fact a character this great is put here speaks to the quality of the next two. And I can't downplay, ALTAIR still is a brilliant character. Where characters like EZIO or Edward have great intentions and morals from the start that only become more prevalent, ALTAIR is completely different from the beginning of AC1 to the end of Assassin's Creed Revelations, and although he begins his story being quite naive, careless and even stupid, he ends it being completely different, understanding why the Creed is so important, and I'm glad that he's one of the most iconic assassins in and out of universe, because of just how much he embodies the values of the Creed, as well as how much he affected the Brotherhood as a mentor that would have a huge knock-on effect. Seeing where ALTAIR ends up in Revelations is incredible, and without a doubt has one of the most satisfying arcs in the series. Now at the second highest spot on this list, I've decided to go with BAYEK of Siwa, a character who from what I've seen is pretty universally loved. BAYEK has a lot of traits that other assassins have had. He's determined, he's light-hearted at times, but also had a stoicism about him, and having a character who had key traits from other assassins we'd see down the line means that it just makes even more sense he was the man who put everything in motion. Abubakar Salim's performance as BAYEK is maybe my favourite in any game. He can pull off anger, sentiment and joy perfectly, and I just love BAYEK because he can be all those things and so much more. He's my favourite thing about Origins and carries what otherwise would have been a somewhat decent story on his back, and even after several replays of Origins and its DLC, I'm left wanting more of BAYEK. Now, of course, the number one spot on this list is Ezio Auditore da Firenze, the best character not only in Assassin's Creed or gaming, but perhaps of all time. Despite going through 3 head writers, Ezio's progression is brilliant and feels incredibly natural. Playing through 2, Brotherhood and Revelations feels like watching a man's life, and it basically is as we see him from birth to death and the incredible journey that he goes on. Ezio is a character who is likeable from the start. He's funny, charismatic, and definitely has principles, and that sympathy for him never leaves. And you love this character, and love him grows as he himself does. And he's the only character in the series lucky enough to have sequels, at least fully fledged ones, and he not only deserved them, but made great use of them too. While it might have been expected that this would be the number one spot, it's earned, and I'll never stop loving this character for who he is and what he means to my favourite franchise, and just to me. Alright lads, thank you for watching this one. Before I do go, I just want to say, a friend of mine that founded Scarab, who you guys might have seen some videos of or recommended one in the past, but basically he started a new channel and he makes some great content. He does some Assassin's Creed stuff. He's about to do an Assassin's Creed ranking of all the games, and it might be out by now. This is scheduled to come out in like a few days, so if it is out, I'll put it in a link on a card and in the description, but I'll put his channel there anyway. Please go and check it out, not just for him, but for me as well. It means a lot if you guys would go and do that. Anyway though, if you enjoyed this one, maybe leave a like. If you didn't, maybe let me know why. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.